To this discussion now, a double blow for the already strained South African consumers as they'll be paying more for fuel and electricity. When it comes to electricity, 13%. That's the tariff increase which kicked in today with the third consecutive price hike on fuel that's expected at midnight on Wednesday. Well, let's discuss this now, and I'm joined in studio by Clyde Mallison, is an energy expert, and on the line we're Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. Let me start in studio. Clyde, good evening to you, and thank you for making the time to join us here. The widespread criticism of this tariff increase is that the already strained consumer is being charged more for a service that's become increasingly irregular over time. Simply means you get it and you don't get it. Do consumers have legal recourse when it comes to such a thing?
I think they do, but let's just dial back a few levels. The reality is that Eskom for a long time has been saying that their tariffs aren't cost reflective. In other words, they're not receiving enough money in order to make Eskom a going concern. Now, I've got a lot of problems with that. I empathize to a certain extent with Eskom. But part of the problem is that they've run up a massive debt. And we needn't go into all the reasons, the problems associated with Madupi Kasili, the grift, the corruption. So in a sense, we're paying, or we're having to pay to a certain extent for corruption and ineptitude. The reality, though, is that they, for a long time, have been asking for the tariffs to be adjusted so that there's more paid as a fixed cost and less as an energy cost. Yeah. In other words, the tariffs need to better reflect the fact that they have to supply you with electricity when you want it, and at the moment we generally just pay for energy. Now, the odd thing about that is that having a tariff that you pay more for the fact that it's being delivered, is that it's not being delivered.
Exactly.
So it's difficult to understand how a tariff restructuring where additional costs are added on for so-called delivery or fixed power, when it's not in fact fixed.
Do consumers have options to fight the tariff increases? Because it's not just this one that's coming into effect this year. 2025 has also already been set, and I think those are going to kick in March next year.
It's normally the 1st of April.
Right.
And the 1st of April is for big consumers. Municipal consumers, the tariff increase normally comes in June. So there's a 3-month mismatch between Eskom-served customers and municipality-served customers. So the Eskom customers are going to get the increase now, but the municipal-served customers will get the increase in June, but their increase will be slightly larger because it takes account of the fact that there's been an additional 3 months of so-called CPI added to it. I think the best way to fight it is on the grounds of irrationality. Not to fight the tariff per se, but to fight the whole way in which the tariffs have been progressing. So I want to give you a quick example. Last calendar year, Eskom spent, and I haven't got the exact figure because Eskom speak in financial years and I like to look at calendar years. They spent of the order of 35 billion rand on diesel. Just let that sink in. You know, we speak about billions. I can't even remember what a billion is. 35 billion rand on diesel. Now, Eskom are not allowed to spend money on building new generation capacity, in particular renewables. Part of the deal that they got when they got the bailout from Treasury is that they're not allowed to spend that money on capital generation infrastructure. But they're blowing it on diesel. Now, just listen to this carefully and let your listeners listen. For 35 billion, we could have built enough solar to generate as much electricity as was generated by the diesel last year. and we wouldn't have had to spend 35 billion. The solar installation would have cost less than 35 billion, and it would have produced it as much energy as what the diesel generators produced. And of course the next year it would have produced it again, and the next year, and the next year, for 20, 25 years. So we blew in 1 year, burnt it up in smoke, as much money as what, if Eskom had said, listen, last year, instead of 16 terawatt hours of shortage, you're going to have 21 terawatt hours.
Yeah.
You'd say, well, we'll take that on the chin. And for that extra 5 terawatt hours, we could have built enough solar. Eskom could have built it and owned it to produce as much electricity as what the diesel produced with 35 billion rand. Now, just let that sink in.
Yeah, we'll come back as to who benefited from that
Yes.
diesel. 35 billion rand.
Yes.
All right, Robert, I'm told you are back. Let's try that once again. The fuel price increases, they will always be a negative impact, or they will always have a negative impact on household income. Has government tried to find ways to cushion the consumers from the increases?
I'm sure I can be audible now. Can you hear me now?
Much better, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Officially, there's no system or mechanism that is in place to cushion the fuel prices. The one that was implemented in 2022 was interim, because it has to the money came from the reduction in the fuel levy. So that was an interim measure. However, what other countries are doing with their stabilization fund is that when prices go down by a big amount, they take a percentage of that money and put aside in a fund. And when the prices go up by a certain amount, then they take the money from the fund and then cushion the prices. So these are some of the mechanisms that the technical team in the department is considering.
Yeah.
Once it's at a stage where we can then publish it for comment, we'll do so that we can also get input from South Africans.
Yeah. So while I have you on the line and while it is still holding, let me perhaps put a final question to you. The Automobile Association has previously called for what they say is a sustainable solution to mitigating these rising fuel costs. And they said this would be by initiating a transparent review of the pricing structure. Has there been any such attempt from the Department of Minerals and Energy?
Yeah, Coley, as you are probably aware, our pricing formula is transparent.